Pick it back up where we left off. We're going to start with number 12. Now this is division. When you see division, you're supposed to think keep, change, flip. Okay, so we're going to keep the first fraction the way it is. We're going to change from division to multiplication, and we will flip the second one. Okay, now you're right back where we were at the very beginning. This is monomials. There's nothing to factor, so you're just looking for common terms. Now, if you want to multiply it all together and then reduce, that's fine. Let's see here. 4 goes into 4 once. It goes into 8 2 times. 3 goes into 3 once. It goes into 15 5 times. Now, I have 1x here, 1x there. That makes 2. So 4 minus 2 is 2. So I've got an x squared down here. And the b's are a perfect match. There's one here and one there, so they completely reduce. So in the top, I have 5, because that's 1 times 5. In the bottom, I have 2 times 1 is just 2, x squared. So that's as small as I can get it. All right, we're going to do the keep, change, flip, but we're going to do our factoring at the same time. So the first one, we're keeping it. But let's see here, 28, 63, I think 7 goes into both of those. So 7 goes in there 4 times, and 7 goes into 63 9 times. All right, 6 and 54, 6 goes in there. It's going to be x plus 9. Okay, got to change it to multiplication, and purposely remember to flip it. So let's do the bottom one and write it on the top. Take out a 2, you got x plus 9. All right, on the top one, oh, you can't do anything with that, can you? That's just 4x plus 9. You're stuck. Okay, so now that you got it factored, look for your matches. 4x plus 9, they cancel. Ooh, look, got an x plus 9 as well. The only thing I see is we got a 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So in the top, I got 7 times 1 is 7, and in the bottom, I've just got a 3. So that's my answer. Okay, scoot on down here. Same idea, keep, change, flip. So I can't do anything with x minus 3. For that trinomial, I need 2 numbers that multiply to 2 and subtract to 1. That would be 2 and 1. Signs are different. Big one's negative. I'm going to change it to multiplication. When I do the top one, I can write it in the bottom, or let's do it the same way we did the other one, excuse me. We'll take the bottom one and write it up here. What 2 numbers multiply to 2 and add to 3? Well, that'd be 2 and 1. Signs are the same, both negative. All right, for the other one, I can take 3 out, and that leaves me x minus 3. So when you look at that, you can reduce your x minus 3s, you can reduce your x minus 2s, and I have opposite signs, so you are stuck. You cannot proceed, even though it's tempting. Can't do anything. All right, least common denominator. Okay, remember, when you're doing the least common denominator, you've got to make sure that every denominator is completely covered in the common denominator. So you have to have all those factors in the common denominator. Okay, so they start you out with a small one. These denominators are completely different. Okay, yes, they both have x's, but we're talking about factors here. We're not talking about terms. So you got to have x minus 2, that's glued together, and you got x minus 5, that's glued together. So your common denominator has to have both of those. They're completely separate. Okay. Now, whenever you get to number 16, it's a little bit more complicated because there's some more stuff there. This goes back to, if you can, factor first. Always, always. So we need to factor these denominators. That's 5 times x minus 3. And over here, let's see here, I can take 3 out, and that leaves, oh, look, x minus 3. Tricky, tricky. They had it hidden. So if you don't factor it, you miss that. So I need to make sure I have an x minus 3. Now that covers both of these. But I also need a 5 and also need a 3. Well, you can multiply those together. That gives me 15. So the 15 covers the 5, covers the 3, and so you got everybody's covered. Okay, this one's even bigger, so we've got a factor. And they gave you some hard ones. Let's see here. For 7, though, it's got to be 7x and x. We need to multiply to 2. Our middle terms need to subtract to 5. Oh, this isn't too bad. We just need to make the 2 in the other one. So there's 2x and there's 7x, and 7x minus 2x, yes, that is 5. We need to make sure the big one is negative. 7x is negative, so here, negative goes here, positive goes there. All right, so let's scoot over and do this one. Okay, I got to have 7x and I got to have x. Now we want to add the 9. Well, we want the 2 to add to the 7, right? Oops, I did that backwards. Excuse me. 1. There we go. So I got a 2x and I got a 7x. But now we're adding our terms. They have the same sign and they're both plus. So if I'm going to get the common denominator between these two things, this is duplicated. But I have 1 on one side, 1 on the other. So writing it one time is sufficient. Now, this denominator says I have to have an x minus 1. Okay, so now everything that is here is written here. But when I look at the other guy, he's like, wait a minute, I've got another piece. So you got to write that down. So you've got to have this part and this part to cover that denominator. That's what I'm saying. You're hoping that they overlap so you can make it a little bit smaller. But you're not going to be able to tell until you factor it. So you always try to factor these things out first. Like if you look at this thing and it says subtract, I would look at that 2a plus 5 just to double check it. Can you factor that? No, you can't. But the denominators are already alike. Since the denominators are the same, you can just go ahead and put it together. So that means in the top I have a minus 3. I didn't have to alter anything because the denominators were already the same. There is nothing you can do to factor and reduce, so you're done. Okay, here, look at your denominators. You can't factor them, but they're both 4x, which means I can just take 4x, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to write all this down. Now, this is a tricky problem because you see we got subtraction. On the other one, it wasn't a big deal because we had subtraction and it was followed by a monomial. So all that was going to make 3 negative. On this one, you're subtracting that binomial, so it's got to change signs. If you don't use parentheses, you're going to miss it. So the first one is okay, but everything that comes after the subtraction sign has to be wrapped up. So that's going to be 8x minus 10y, and that's going to be a negative 6x plus 7y. Okay, and just keep your 4x rolling down there. Now get your like terms together. I got an 8x and I got a negative 6x, so that's going to be 2x. And then let's put your y's together. That's going to be, what, negative 3y? Now, careful, careful, careful. Remember, you have to factor before you reduce. So do not jump the gun and try to reduce this 2x and 4x. You cannot, because that 2x is attached with a minus sign. So you can't do it. If you can't pull something out and, have it where there's something out here with what's in the bottom, then you can't factor. So this is stuck. You are done. Finished. This is it. Okay, on this one, again, you already have a common denominator, so we're not working that hard. You got your first one, and then minus, okay, if you want to, you can use parentheses, but you don't have a binomial, so it's not that crucial. So you just got 11z minus 7z is what, 4z? Minus 2 all over 6z. Okay, now this is what I was talking about earlier. Can you factor something out of the top? Hope you thought so, because everything there is even. I can take a 2 out. If you take a 2 out of the top, that gives me 2z minus 1. So yes, you try to factor at the beginning, and yes, you try to factor at the end. Factor, 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 factor. You always do that before you try to reduce. Okay, so now that the 2 is multiplied times that group and the 6 is multiplied times the z, that frees them up. These are factors. So 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 6 3 times. So I've got the group up there, and then the bottom I have a 3 and I've got the z. Don't throw the z away. You got to keep him. That's your reduced answer. All right. So we're doing addition, but again, common denominator is already given. This shouldn't be nearly as hard because you don't have to worry about distributing negatives. So c squared minus 7z, and that's just going to be plus 5c minus 3. All right, so I got c squared minus 2c minus 3 all over c minus 3. Okay, remember what I just said? Always try to factor. That looks suspicious up there. If we don't try to factor, we're going to be in trouble. So is there 2 numbers that multiply to 3 and subtract to 2? Yes, there is. There's 3 and 1. Signs are different. Big one's negative. So that'll work. Do we have a match? Heidi-ho, yes we do. So c plus 1 is in the top. You don't have to write anything in the bottom because everything canceled out. All right, now they finally get you one that has different denominators. Okay, let the bell ring. Okay, so you've got to get the common denominator with that process we did earlier with least common denominator. So 7's prime. Basically, all this is 7 times 8. Now, it doesn't always work that way to be the least common denominator, but 7 times 8 is what we're going to need. So what we had done in class is basically you're going to come to this one and you say, okay, I need to multiply top and bottom times 8. And on this one, I need to multiply top and bottom by 7. So, okay, just kind of ignore this. On the left side, that's going to give me 8b over, and then 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, here's your minus sign. On this side, you're going to do 3 times 7 is 21, and in the bottom, let's see here, what is that going to be? 56. Okay, so now I've got the same thing on the bottom. Squash it together. I got 8b minus 21. Does it factor? 8 and 21 have nothing in common, so you are stuck. Just stop right there. Okay. All right, here we go. It's not a perfect match in the denominator. There's some similarities. Now, they both have an x. So the x is good, and we're going to keep the x, and I was jumping the gun down here. We've got to match with our coefficients. So to make it match, I'm going to have to multiply this one times 6 over 6, and this one's got to be multiplied times 5 over 5. So if I do that on the, here, let me take this out. I should have done that. On the first one, the first term, that's going to be 6 times a negative 3 is negative 18. And then I got 6 times 5x is 30x. Okay, bring down your plus sign. Now do the other side. I'm going to put him down here. 1 times 5 is 5. 6x times 5 is 30x. Now, that was our little devious plan. Now our denominators are the same. So you want to do it as a common denominator. That gives me negative 18 plus 5. Well, those are like terms. You need to put those together. So negative 18 plus 5 is a negative, what is that, 13 over 30x. And there is nothing in common between 13 and 30. So you should be stuck. Okay. All right. Similar. But this is a little bit more advanced because 8 and 6, you don't want to just multiply by 8 and 6. You're just going to make your problem too big. There's a smaller number that both 8 and 6 divide into. Hopefully you're thinking of 24. I know it's called least common denominator, but it's based on the idea of least common multiple. So what is the smallest number that both of them divide into? So if I'm trying to make these 24c, that's my least common denominator. That's what I'm aiming for. So this one, let's see here, 8 goes into 24 3 times. 6 goes into 24 4 times. Okay, now when you do that, you're distributing. So we've upgraded, now we got binomials. So you're going to come in here and you're going to do, let's see here, 3 times 6 is 18c minus 15 all over, what is that, 24c. Bring down your minus, and then I'm going to have, let's see here, what is that, 12c minus 16 all over 24c. Okay, so now let's do the squish it together. But remember that thing we did earlier, when you got a binomial preceded by a minus, you got to distribute. So now I'm just going to go ahead and distribute it. So that would be a negative 12c, and then that's going to be a positive 16. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just distributing both terms. So get your like terms together. That's going to be 18 minus 12 is 6c, and negative 15 and positive 16 is positive 1 over 24c. You are stuck because you cannot, I know this is tempting because you've got 6c over 24c. Don't fall for it. That plus 1 keeps you from going any further. That 6c is not fair game. Okay? So let me save this and we'll pick it up on the next one.